Hello. Happy Monday. So I'm going to start. Don't know who's coming today, but since you guys can watch this after, I'm just going to start. And if someone comes in, then I will recap. So when I want, oh, I see someone coming. Hi, Nicole.
Hi, Francis.
How are you?
Good. I just got out of the shower.
How's your weekend?
Pretty chill.
Okay, good. So I want to go through the keywords today. So in your astrology basics, you have a sheet with all the keywords for each sign. And you have a key phrase. So these key phrases, let me share the screen. And then what I did was I took the key phrases and I took my chart, and then we can do it with yours if you want to do that. So let me share.
And this is under like further basics or bonus material. Where would or I statements?
It's in the I statements. You've got all of the keywords per sign. So it's another way to start to break down your chart, or if you're looking at other people's charts. So you've got in your astrology basics package, each sign. So for instance, Aries is at the top, it says I am, that's the keyword phrase. And then there's like a bunch of keywords so that you could start to get just acquainted with like the qualities of each of the signs. So I'm just going to take the key phrases and I'm going to find on your chart the planet. So for instance, Mars is Aries. We're going to give it the I am, and we're going to do mine, and then we could do yours. My Mars is in Capricorn, which means I use, and then we're going to tie it into the second house. So the person uses these phrases or these statements or keywords in their life. That's how they channel that sign or that planet through the house it's in. So it's another way to kind of streamline how they use the energy. Now, going back to what we've talked about and what's in your astrology basics on levels of consciousness, within that, now the native chooses how they use that level of consciousness. So I broke down mine, and then I'll also want to address the black moon and how we do that one, and ascendant and how we do that one. So this is a really good synopsis of going through every single planet in your chart and doing this sort of breakdown so you can see why people are the way they are, why they live out that planet through that sign and in that house. So first, let's start with the keywords. Aries is I am. Aries is about identity. So wherever you have Aries, wherever you have Mars, it's going to be, or whatever planet, and mine is in Chiron, you'll see it's an identity question. Taurus is about I have, so like the possession, the second house, the values. Gemini is about thinking. So for instance, I have Saturn in Gemini in the 7th. So I'm going to think this way about relationships, maybe even more so than feel. So you start to see how the person is why they are based on these keywords or these keyword statements through the chart. Leo is I will, and if you think of like willing something or the sun, you will this into creation since it's the 5th house. Virgo is I analyze. Libra is I balance. Scorpio is I want. Sag is I aim. Capricorn I use. Aquarius I know. And Pisces I believe. So we're going to go through each one by the planet that rules the sign. And then the native has it in a sign. You would add another keyword and then the house. And that's as you start learning keywords. In our first class, I mentioned try to get 1 or 2 words per sign, per house, so that you could start to do this type of activity. So now we start to build on it. So I'll show you my chart, for instance. I just put it here, and then we can bring up yours. I'm just going to start in order. So Aries would be Mars, Taurus would be Venus, then I'll address Venus in a second. since there's two. Gemini I would look at the Mercury. The moon, I would look for Cancer. For Leo, the sun. For Virgo, the Chiron. For Libra, again, the Venus. And Scorpio, Pluto. Sagittarius, Jupiter. Aquarius, Uranus. Pisces, Neptune. That only leaves us with the black moon and the ascendant. And so black moon, we treat it as Scorpio, as I want. And the ascendant, in my case, is Sag, I aim, but we're getting the second part of the statement, you'll see in the next slide, from the decanat. And in my case, it's Jupiter, which is I aim. You had a question.
So you're looking at the planets, not the sign that the planets reside in.
Correct. This is just a different way to explain how we express. So I'll go through mine and then we'll bring yours up so you can see. And then what it does, it gives you sort of like a little graph. And if you want, you could start making the statements to explain why you live out in that particular area, that energy, or that's the way you show up in that space. So let's just go to, and like I said, I just broke down mine, but you can substitute yours. So Mars is going to be I am. Venus is going to be I have. Mercury is going to be I think. So these are all in order. I just basically went in the order of Aries to Pisces here. Black moon, I put I want for Scorpio, and then Sagittarius, because my ascendant is Sagittarius, I put I aim. But if you want to leave the black moon and the ascendant for later, that's fine. Just go to the first 12.
So you're looking
Aries,
at
Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sag, Capricorn, Uranus, or Aquarius, and Pisces. I just went in order of the signs.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that I understand that how you're doing this.
Sure.
So you're looking at the planets, and then you're using the statement that corresponds to the sign, and then you're looking at the sign that your planet is in to come up with the second part, and then the house.
Exactly. So
Okay.
now, and I'll just go through and then we can see how you live it out. Now, if you do something like this, if you break down the chart like this, now when you're consulting or when you're looking at someone's chart, again, even if you're just playing around with friends and family now, this is the invitation that comes later to raise consciousness around that, right? So instead of, if something is, you have a sheet on your astrology basics that's planets that are exalted, planets that are in fall, planets that are in detriment. This is another way to see. So for instance, I happen to have Mars in Capricorn, which is exalted, Venus in Pisces, which is exalted. So I know that those two areas of my chart are even more important than the others. If you have a sun in Aquarius, for instance, that's in fall or detriment. You have a sun in Cancer in the 10th, that's in a fall or a detriment. So it starts to explain, once you do sort of this grid, why certain people have difficulty and struggle. And I'll give you my example of my moon. I think my moon's a really good example of why it's so difficult for me emotionally. So Mars is I am, right there. Capricorn is I use, and it's in the second house. So if my identity is linked to what I have, I mean, linked to what I use in the second house of money, possessions, and values, I am going to have this as a very important focal point, besides the fact that it's exalted, that what I use or my value system or my possessions or my money or my things are how I identify my identity. Now, in a bigger scale, Aries and Mars is always I am. Anywhere we have Mars or Aries is going to be an identity. So how does Francis differ from Nicole? The sign and the house. So if my identity is linked very much so to values, and it's a lot of what I write about, that's going to be one way that I have an identity in the world. And I'm going to use those values or that money or those possessions to feel that I am. So let's bring up yours. So these are all different ways to kind of grasp the chart. What, I don't have your chart. That's weird. Okay, you'll have to. I'm shocked that I don't have it saved. Okay. How about it? Was it June 22nd?
June 25th,
June 25th?
1978.
Oh. Time?
12:21 p.m.
And Mobile?
Mobile, Alabama.
Okay, so let's see yours. Okay, so here's your I am, I analyze, and then one of the keywords of the 12th is bottom of the ocean, or karma, or enemy, hidden enemies, but it's something hidden or below the surface. So part of your identity, I am, will be to analyze. So how you identify yourself in the world in one of your key constructs would be to analyze. And maybe it's something that's not common. Maybe it's something that's not commonplace because it's under the radar, it's the 12th. So that would be linked to one of the ways that you identify yourself to have an identity, because Mars and Aries is about how we identify in the world, how we show up as an identity. That's why the key words are I am. So how do you play that out? How does that resonate?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I think that talk that I gave was a great example of that, right? Like I'm basically digging in underneath the surface of things that people aren't looking at to provide some like larger analysis of a situation and presenting that on, yeah, kind of an unusual topic too. So,
right. And the synthesis of Virgo, the analysis of Virgo in a 12th house that's so grand, right? It's like really taking this larger picture, but through the identity with your analysis, you're bringing something that might seem so ungraspable or hidden to people. And so now it's a different lens of your identity. And so when someone says, oh, she's under the radar or she's into the woo-woo thing, no, it's just that your identity, the Mars, the Aries, that I am this analytical person in themes of the subconscious, for instance, or themes that are below the surface or hidden or dreams or something. And then you start to make the sentence. So now you understand or who you're reading for yourself, why you are the way you are. And I can say this 100 different times, the best tool for self-analysis is astrology, like hands down. And because it's this level of precision. And now we could take it to the decanat and we could take it to the degree, you know, like you could keep going fine tune. But today we're just going to do sentence with the phrase, and the house phrase or word. So now you start to understand why that becomes who you are. So now let's go. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just reflecting. I say that I'm like a massive pattern maker. Like I read big patterns.
Right. And then you synthesize or analyze, and then you make your own identity or the way you bring it into the world through your sun, right? Your 10th house is you've done sort of the patchwork for people, right? That could be part of the identity that's linked to that. I'm very, very much about values. I'm not so much about material possessions, but value systems. You know, you see that in my teachings, like living by my values is like a core construct of my identity, you know? So you start to see why the person is that they are. Now, from a level of consciousness perspective, you can do a low level consciousness, or you can, you know, live it out in a higher state of consciousness. That's the offering that when you're reading for someone or you're presented with now this thing, I could easily live this out. And not to say that I haven't, and it's not that I don't seek wealth, you know, as part of my earthly needs, is that I have misused my resources. I've misused money because of this. Because if I am and I use, then I use them incorrectly. And you'll see that with my moon that's in opposition. Then you could start to see when we do aspects, why a good placement like Mars in Capricorn, exalted, an amazing house, has been detrimental for me because of the opposition to the moon. So until I learn to navigate that relationship, then I'll keep using it as a hindrance. So that's when we start to layer hard aspects, why someone has such a good aspect of the chart. That's why I always say we don't piecemeal the chart. We look at this holistically. So Venus would be for Taurus. Now I said I was going to discuss the fact that we have two Venuses. So you've got the Taurus Venus and you've got the Libra Venus. It's going to be the same in terms of the statement because you're looking at the same planet and the same sign in the same house, but you're going to have a, here I should have put I balance, I'm sorry. This is the change. The change is that the Libra statement is I balance and the Taurus is I have. Now, a couple of weeks ago, you asked about the higher vibrations and the esoteric planets and so forth. And we talked about Alice Bailey and I showed you the spiritual adulting map. This is a perfect example. The lower consciousness of Venus is through the Taurus because it's linked to more of the material, the I have. Whereas the Libra is more of the agape love or the Aphrodite or the Venus that's giving to others. So we see an earthly nature, the I have, versus a spiritual nature that I balance that earthly nature with my spiritual nature. So it's, even though it's the same planet in the same sign, in the same house, the first sentence is different. And on that spiritual adulting map, I mention that we have the Venus archetype, and then after we get at the top with the wounded ruler, then we go right back into the second Venus, that agape love, or what's called the Aphrodite Urania. So there's a reason that there's two. The other thing, and if you know tarot, you'll know this card, the Lover card. The Lover card in tarot is a man with two women, and he's basically trying to choose. And this is the same thing. The Lover always has two versions, whether it's in tarot, whether it's the Venus in astrology ruled by Taurus and Libra. And the point is that we have to balance our earthly consciousness, our desires of the flesh, with our spiritual consciousness, our desires of the soul. So we see this repeated in all esoteric traditions. So the Venus is I have, and the Pisces is I believe, and in my case, it's the third house. So my thought, my schooling, the way I teach is very linked to this. In my earthly story, I went to spiritual schools, parochial schools. So I lived out the sort of Pisces education or the spiritual education. So let's look at yours. Okay, so your Venus is in Leo. Okay, so you have I have and I will in the 11th. So how do you live that out with groups or social aspects or isms? It's the house of sort of like isms, like communism, socialism, politics, those type of group identity. How do you live out an I have and an I will? How do you balance that in a group setting?
I mean, I would say that I don't necessarily fall into group think.
Okay, well, that makes sense.
I bring my own individual will and like self-sovereignty and understanding and perspectives into group conversations. And
There it
that's
is.
actually something I like doing, is to not go with the grain of the group per se.
That's perfect. So your group, 11th house, is you have your own will. You bring your own will. You bring that individuation of, which is one of the words of Leo. So you start to see why you're that way. And it's awesome that you like that about yourself. You know, Leo is actually detriment in the 11th house, because
Oh, really?
Aquarius and Leo are opposite signs. And this is the house of Aquarius. This is the house of groupthink. And you're saying, no, I'm bringing my individual nature, the opposite of Aquarius, which is Leo here. So this is an area, especially if you like it about yourself, where you shine, where perhaps you bring a different take, you bring a personalized splash to a group. So that's great. And if you like that about yourself, even better.
I like it. That doesn't mean everyone else likes it.
Right. That's fine. This is you.
It doesn't create ease per se.
Well, that's why it's a detriment or fall. So look at that chart of the detriment, fall, exaltation, and natural ruler. The natural ruler, like for instance, my moon is in Cancer, that's a natural ruler. The opposite is the moon in Capricorn, that's in fall. The exaltation is a house or a sign where the planet really does well, like Mars in Capricorn, both very ambition, ego-driven signs. And the fall or the detriments are places that the planet does not like to be, like the sun in the 12th. It does not like to be there. The sun in Aquarius doesn't like to be in Aquarius or Libra. They're collective signs, and the sun wants to be individual. So the fact that you like that about yourself, that's great. And if others have a problem, well, then that's their own sort of projection or shadow that they work through. But that's awesome. So you start
I think this is part of the reason I like have a love-hate relationship with groups.
Okay. Well, I have Uranus and Libra in the 11th. So I've got the I know in the house of the I know. So the Aquarius in the Aquarius, right? The Aquarius house and the Uranus planet in the sign of I balance. But I have such an individual take on those themes. And Uranus, or this idea of I know, an Aquarius of I know, is that I know something different. I know something special. I know something that others don't know, which is nonsense. I don't know anything. I just, the way my take on it is mine. So that's why groups are oftentimes the place where we can live out these, we're so original or we're so different. And it's part of the whole bigger chart is, how do I make myself ordinary and original, right? Mm-hmm. So your sun lives that out. Your sun is Cancer, is sort of ordinary in the masses, but here it is, it needs to stand out in the 10th house of Capricorn. So you start to see another thematic. But the fact that you love that, that's great. So let's go to Gemini. So Gemini is, I think, my Mercury, it's in Pisces, I believe, in the 4th house. Now, if we look at 4th house as childhood, and I grew up in a very spiritual home, all of my thoughts were linked to belief about spirit, about the philosophies that we studied. So my home life supported thinking and believing as faith, believing as in almost blind faith or an innocence around your belief system, not questioning things. That even, it's ironic because that's actually an exalted placement. I'm sorry, Venus in Pisces, not Mercury in Pisces. That's not an exalted placement. A Mercury, which is logical and rational, in a sign of belief and faith, those two don't jive. And I know that I struggle with reality. Like that's a big theme of mine. I struggle with the reality of just 2 + 2 of the earthly, right? So that's another place, and it's because of the foundation. So here's my Mercury in Pisces in the 4th. So let's go to yours. So your Mercury is in Cancer. Okay, so I think and I feel in the 10th. So how do you unify the thinking and the feeling through your professional endeavors? Now, as we get older, right, we learn to navigate these better. Try to think back in your younger years when maybe it was like you felt everything professional rather than the logic, and how you've learned to navigate that, which obviously is the gift of the transits and age. But how do you bring that out?
Well, I mean, I feel like I am taking that, well, like it's a polarity, right, with Mercury, but part of the work that I've done is to really bring things down into the body and into the not just mental way, and to see how those things line up, that the feeling and the thinking lined up together is what I ultimately want to express externally into the world.
Okay, so look at the 3 that we've looked at. Your Mars, you take these larger sort of concept, 12 house concepts, and you synthesize or analyze them through Virgo. Your Venus is in this group, but you synthesize it through an individual or personal lens. And your Mercury, a feeling, you take that larger concept of a feeling and you're channeling it through the logic and of course your profession. So you start to see a theme that it's almost like you take a larger thing and you weave, or you put the thread through the needle, right? And you start to make it more simple. Like you're part of the synthesis of the chart. Part of the message of the chart is to take these larger scale concepts and find some similarity or a unifying a thread or a simplification. And it makes sense with a Virgo ascendant. And we talked about this, how the cusp of Leo, I mean, the 12th house cusp of Leo is like, I am this, and I feel, what did I tell you when we met? Phenomenal cosmic powers, itty bitty living states. That's the conundrum of the ascendant in Virgo. That's very specific for that. So, but that theme we've already seen in your Mars, we're already seeing in your Venus, and we've already seen in your Mercury. So when you make this chart and you start to find the thread, you're like, oh, this is my thread through all of these placements. And you start to find that universal theme of your life. We are not these fragmented beings. The job is to find synthesis. And you're like me, we've got these splay charts. So we're jack of all trades. And part of our gift of life or mode of life is to find a master of one through all these different things that we're interested in, versus someone who's very clustered in, let's say, a bucket chart or something. So now that's another added layer. But we've already, in 3 planets with these statements, we've already found that it's like you take this and you go here. You take this and you go here.
It's so like being in an eternal birth canal, Frances.
Yeah.
Good God. No wonder I get headaches sometimes.
Cool to see that that thread. Okay, so let's go to feeling Cancer for both of us. So my moon is in Cancer, so that's the natural placement, the dignity. I feel plus I feel in an 8th house of feeling, of shadow. I mean, you could tell like who I am just by this. I mean, this is my entire life. This one sentence. I feel the shadows, everything sexual in me has to be emotion. I have to be in love with you. Like, it's just so over the top, you know? So you have a lot, but let's just, well, your moon's in Pisces. So let's look at that. So you've got the moon, I feel, in the I believe sign in the analysis house. Again, big, big, let me weave that thread. Like, you can't make this up. It's like so on point. Now, you, like me, have an opposition of Mars to moon. And even though that's level 3, it just, it's pertinent, right?
Mhm.
This is going to be in clash with this. So that's why I said before, I can't really use my Mars so great because my moon is always there in the way. Imagine how much more I would have made or been if I didn't have all that emotion to block the Mars. And it's similar. So a big part of this concept of, and notice how they're almost opposite. You start with a Pisces in a Virgo house, where here you're in a Pisces with a Virgo sign.
Mhm.
So they're both saying the same thing, but they're at odds. So sometimes you take it big and you make it small, or sometimes you make it small and you make it big. And you're going to flip flop from that moon to Mars. And I have the same thing. I'm going to make a lot of money, but I'm going to spend it on my emotions, or my emotions are going to drive me to make a lot of money or live my values. So you could see how we're that opposition, instead of it allowing it to really flourish, gets in its own way because of that. But there you see the
Yeah.
thread. It's that Pisces is here. Yeah, I believe, but you're in an analysis house.
Yeah, I feel and I believe something, but let me just like noodle on this for eternity and not actually put it out into the world.
Of course, because it's in the Virgo house of perfection.
It's gotta be perfect, right?
Exactly. And even more so because of the opposition.
Yeah.
If it was allowed to just be without an aspect, or the trine, right? You've got this beautiful trine to all this water here, then it wouldn't be so bad. But you have your moon, and again, this is level 3, but you've got an opposition to the moon and a square to the moon. So your moon is what we call afflicted. And so that's why we can't piecemeal chart. Because if you only look at, oh, the moon in Pisces, okay, that's a beautiful place. Obviously, you can work in spirituality, obviously holistic medicine. But if I don't see how you're blocked with the opposition and the square, then I'm going to tell the client, oh, you've got this great moon in Pisces in the 6th. This is how you're going to live it out. And I'm going to miss out on the other aspects of their psyche that they get in their own way, like you're saying. So let me overthink and overthink and overplan and never put anything into place. So that's why later on, when we start to add the layers of the oppositions, the squares, the sextiles, the trines, the quincunxes, we start to see why someone doesn't live out such a nice placement, and rather it doesn't work for them. So we see that thematic. So next is Leo. That's going to be the sun. So everybody's sun is where they're going to will it, and that house is going to be the main stage. So when Shakespeare says the world's a stage and men and women are merely players, it's reference to the house where the sun is. So there's always going to be a will in that particular house. So I often say that I can't get out of my house. It is so hard for me to get out of my house because I'm a 4th house sun. So I will myself into the genie bottle, like I'm here. Where do I need to go? And then I add Pisces, I believe. And so my home is a spiritual dwelling. It's always been something where my belief, you walk into my house and you can see that I believe in multiple things because of the way it's outfitted. So that becomes the stage in which everyone's going to sort of wear their costumes. So it's always I will, and you're going to find energy in the house of the sun because it's the will house that you may not have in other areas of your life. So in yours, it's the 10th. So the sun and yours is, so now you have I will, and again, I feel in the 10th, which is the profession or a public persona. So how do you live out your I feel and I will in your scenario of public image or profession?
Yeah, I mean, that that is my profession, essentially, is it's taking the feeling concepts and putting my personal kind of stamp and belief on it and putting it out into the world.
Okay. And what you're saying about your personal belief, look at your black moon is right conjunct your sun. So this is sort of the individuality or that archetype that is like you're the ruler. Because it's Scorpio, it's I want. So here we can see another sort of conundrum or incongruence. If the sun is in the 10th, which is a Capricorn house, right? Which is I use, but your Cancer is I feel, there could be like, well, how do I use something or someone when really it's supposed to be about the Cancer and the emotion and the feeling? That could be a struggle. And then Lilith over here says, oh, no, we want.
Mm-hmm.
And so it gives more credence to I want, I use, I will do this for myself, and then others can follow. So this is actually really beneficial for you. Without this black moon there, you might really struggle in giving yourself permission that you're allowed to use and you're allowed to have and you're allowed to want. And then you just might be all mushy and feely, but then what are you putting out into the world? So this is actually a really helper archetype or planet in your chart next to your sun. So that now we're just doing the basics, but if you now add, in this case, that layer, now it's I feel, I will, and I want in the I use house. Now you put all those tools together, and that's how professionally you move in the world. So it just gives more validity that you're exactly who you're supposed to be. I had a client the other day, and she's like, I have all these planets in the fixed cross. She goes, that makes me so selfish. And I'm like, no. Yes, the fixed cross is a hoarder cross and they keep their energy, but what created that behavior? And she's like, well, no, I had nothing. All my siblings took everything. So I had to almost fight. So something in there, if this is a family drama and everybody's taking, you had to go and say, wait, I want, and take something. That has to be similar in your story because of this aspect. That makes sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And I could definitely see how I would really be detrimental in not earning money if I didn't have that black moon placement. Because it's like, no, I've felt this and I want to put it to good use.
Right.
And the best way I can put it to good use is to do something with it in the world professionally and receive benefit.
Yeah. So if we're looking just at statements for a moment, I will, I feel, if the 10th house is Capricorn, I use. So I use what I will and feel to produce, to use this as something for myself, and then others may benefit because it's a lot of Cancer. But I agree. I think in your case, this black moon is very beneficial for you. It gives you that I want that the Cancer would not. The Cancer would be like, oh, but I can't. I have to be so emotional and I have to give. And
yeah, it reminds me of when
me first.
That statement I made in the chat one day about, well, if people are going to need help, I may as well
of course,
be the one
right.
to do it and receive. It's like, absolutely. Yeah, I may as well use it.
So if you just went by your chart, I think I told you guys that when I first started, I printed out like this mammoth natal chart. I had it on my wall. And so that I would, if you were printing it out, I would go to each one and make the key phrases. And so this is I want, next to I will, next to I aim, next to I think. It makes a lot of sense that this is how you're going to move professionally. And yes, you're working it through a Cancerian I feel lens, and you're very empathic and you've got the psychic going on, but it's not keeping you from your aim, from thinking, from willing, I want, and I have to do this, even though I'm going to do it through a feeling lens. So it just gives credence again to I am who I am. And again, we try to encourage obviously growth. That's part of why people come and why the tool is so powerful. But first knowing what is unchangeable, what your nature is, and then what you can change, which is choosing the level of consciousness on that sheet of the 4 levels of consciousness. But first understanding, oh, that's why I do that. And so back to that client when she was like, oh, that hoarding cross and all that fix. And I said, no, there was a reason you needed to create that behavior. And in her case, it was like to fight all these siblings. I mean, maybe for food and just basic necessities. So we're not crazy. It confirms we are who we have to be. And now from that point, now let's evolve. And that's what, of course, transits and so forth will do. So next is Virgo, I analyze. So Chiron and in Aries. And I'm actually going, and you have a video on Chiron, but I'm actually going to be doing a workshop. I don't know when yet, but it's going to be about all of the Chiron and the questions. And this is an important thing. Chiron is the core wound. So every single human being shares a core wound, and it's usually around worthlessness, abandonment, rejection, or not enough. Those are sort of the 4 biggies, and they're all the same, but depending on how we live it. So the Chiron sign is how we channel that wound. And so people like me, and these are generational, okay? So you're gonna, when you see people, it's gonna be the sign is a generation, a good 5 to 7 years of the same people with the same Chiron sign. In my generation, there's a big issue with identity. Who am I? So my wound or my analysis is around I am. I analyze who I am. So everyone's being analyzed through that other sign. And it's in the 4th, so of course in my family. And that's the natural placement for the black sheep, the person who doesn't have a clue where they belong in the world or in the family. So I live that out pretty on point. So is yours in Scorpio? Oh, in Taurus. Okay. So I analyze what I have in the construct or in the environment of others. So it's going to be your analysis of yourself. And remember, just keep in mind that Chiron is always a wound that you're trying to satisfy. So part of the wound of analyzing who you are is going to be through what you have and in the sight or the validation of others. So that's an important placement for everybody, because this is really going to be the core. So because it's Taurus and it's about having, there's going to be a worthlessness. So mine is the identity within a group, within the family. Of course, I'm going to feel like I don't have an identity. I'm going to be moved into the world seeking an identity. You're going to be moving into the world seeking validation, and through your things, having Taurus-y things, whether it's the body, whether it's money, whether it's your values. But there's going to be the lens of the other, because the 8th house, in my case, it's who am I in my family. So that top is going to be every sign, every placement, every house, and the kind of question that is asked.
Yeah, I am enough was something that kept coming up, and I kept repeating to myself the other day, because once I landed back home and I could feel the impulse of my nervous system wanting to do more. And I was like, oh, that's just a trick of like trying to do more to prove that I have the thing that the person wants to like. And it's just like, nope, like I am enough. I'm enough. Like I don't have to keep like working so hard, Taurus.
Yep. So my mom's birthday was a couple days ago, and we had a group chat, and my brother and I are like 16 months apart, and I hadn't heard this in so many years, and I had been working through this. And my sister says something about getting like one of those genetic 23andMe test or whatever. And he makes a joke. Talk about projection. Oh, what are you going to find out Francis is adopted? Like, how childish are we at 50 years old that he's still saying that? But that's my Chiron. That's my Chiron and Aries in the fourth. And I just had to, and he happens to be Virgo. I just had to laugh. And I was like, okay, there it is again. You know, like we're constantly confirming that wound. And I just laughed. I didn't even comment on the group chat, but I laughed because I was like, this is just so on point. Who am I in this fourth house? Who am I in this home? Who am I in this family? And that from that manger. And so the identification of I am enough can stop that sort of like, you know, like you're saying, the nervous system. And the reason I bring that up is that Chiron, and you see this in your Chiron or your Virgo class, Chiron is the body, and all illness goes through and is purified through the body. So that thought of I am not enough or I am enough is going to be channeled through the body. So when you can stop that, it stops some sort of illness, or it stops whatever purification of that thought needs to happen. And so Chiron or Virgo is very important in that sense because it's the vessel. And so being able to stop that belief or that thought says, oh, I'm going to sort of salvage the body from having to purify the impure thought of I'm not enough. So we start to see that mind-body connection. And then the other thing I say in that video is, and this is in the myth, Chiron's favorite student was Hercules. And Hercules is seen in Mars. So if I need to cover my wound, I'm going to cover it with what I am, my ego. So Chiron and Mars have that relationship, and we'll see that more in level 3 when we do aspects, or level 2. The relationship between Chiron and Mars talks about how we use our Mars, our I am, to cover this wound of I'm analyzing I'm not enough, or rejected, or abandoned. And that's in the myth of Chiron. So you start to see why people live out their ego or their Mars or their Aries to cover up what they know themselves to not be, which is in this case Taurus. I don't have enough, or I am not enough in the eyes of others, for instance, or me and my family's eyes. I don't have an identity. It's cool. And the phrases just kind of help shrink it so that you have a quick check until you learn all of the words. You know, I'm teaching this guy on Mondays, and he asked me for like keywords of archetypes similar. We're doing it, the truths, but it's the same thing with the archetypes. And I said, just study these keywords in shadow, just 1 or 2 words. So once we get it, then we can build the vocabulary, and you have the list of all the words. But first start with these statements. Libra. So Libra's I balance. And we're going to look at Venus. So Venus is I balance and I believe, in my case, and I have that in the 3rd. So again, we're talking about the same concept of Taurus, but we're doing it with the Venus of Libra. It's the same sentence, except we change out the I balance. So I try to balance with what I believe of knowledge. 3rd house is what I learn, or the teachings, or the illusion. The 3rd house is also a lower consciousness or dual consciousness. So I have to bring faith to my logical mind, or through my K to 12 thinking, however you want to wrap that up. And we looked at yours with the Leo. So now it's I balance my will in the house of others. So what's nice about that is you say that it's not always, you know, accepted so easily by the group, but it's obviously something that you can navigate. It's not like more impulsive or more invasive is really the word I'm looking for. It's a Venus. So you navigate it with beauty or with balance. So that's the nice part of that one. Okay, Scorpio. So Scorpio is I want. And I always think of that anecdote of the scorpion trying to cross the pond, and he asked the frog for the ride, and the frog's like, I can't let you get on my back because you'll sting me and you'll kill me.
Mm.
And he's like, no, I won't. And when he gets off of him, he ends up doing that. And he's like, why did you sting me? And he's like, it's in my nature. And so these statements are our nature. And that's why I always say 90% of our fire is spent on trying to change the unchangeable. This is your nature. These statements in this house, this is your nature. What you can choose is to transmute, is to raise consciousness around your nature, but you cannot change that nature. And Scorpio, wherever we have it, is where you want. That's why it's the lust, it's the envy, it's the jealousy. And Scorpio's an archetypal rules the devil, it rules Satan. And so we think that it's those things that we want that cause us, or the desires that cause us most pain. That's why everything's about detachment, or don't give in to the desires. So this is a really important one. Wherever you have Pluto, there's gonna be that I want energy. So I have Pluto, I want in Libra, I balance. So I want to balance in my professional house. And that's what I try to achieve. I'm constantly trying to achieve this balance of spirit and matter, light and dark, good and bad. That's the way I live that out professionally. So where do you have Pluto? In your first. Okay, so the wanting is self. In a sign that's of the others, this is and this is generational. Your Pluto and my Pluto are in the same, because we're in the same generation. So that's another thing that you're going to learn. There's a sheet in your astrology basics that's the speed of the planets. The speed of the planets tell you how long a planet is in a sign or how many years. Pluto is within a sign for 12 to 24 years. So we're in the same generation of that 12 to 24 year period. Then people move into Scorpio, then move into Sagittarius. Now the kids that are being born are in Capricorn. So those are very generational. So keep that in mind when you're doing the statements. This is a generational thing, that I want balance in myself. Sagittarius, I aim. So I have Jupiter in Aquarius in the second. I aim to know my worth. That's my big thing. Pisces have no clue what their worth is. They don't know who the hell they are. So that's a big, that's a thematic in my chart. No identity with the Chiron, all the Pisces, who the hell am I? Is this faith-based? So that's very marked. And that's actually one of my great placements. I love my Jupiter in Aquarius, but I aim to know my value. I aim to know what my possessions are. What am I allowed to have that's mine? And that's why I talk too much, right? I overshare. I don't know what my pearls are. So you start to see why people develop the patterns that they do. So I aim to know what's mine, even materially, because I have it opposite that moon in the 8th, where I feel so much, I give all my belongings. So you start to see behaviors that are developed with these statements. So I aim to feel maybe professionally in the world, or I aim to feel who I am as a professional with a layer of I think, because you've got this conjunction here. So how do you live that
out? I aim to feel who I am in the world with I think.
Well, you have a layer of the I think here with the Mercury, even though it's in the I feel, and we talked about that one. But if we're just looking at the Jupiter, I aim to feel professionally, or in a public stage, or in the house of I use. So do you over aim? Do you over, achieve? Do you over feel and it doesn't turn out to be what you wanted on the professional arena, for instance?
Yeah. Okay. So so I aim big, right? Like
Jupiter in the
aim-
10th.
I tend to aim big, and I sometimes will go on my feeling, and like Mercury will kind of come in and be like, wait, think about this. And I'm like, no, let's aim big. Let's just go with the feeling. And then, yeah, sometimes that does result in disappointment.
Well, and I was going to point out,
like, but I'm perpetually in that process. Like it doesn't stop me. Like I still will aim and feel the thing.
right.
And it's like,
And
okay,
wherever we
well,
have
if that
Jupiter,
didn't go great. Let me think about what I could do differently.
right. And we have Jupiter, it's going to be abundance. It's going to be gluttony. So you have it in a gluttonous sign already, right? So what you're aiming for, you're going to aim big and you're going to aim for a chunk, right? Like me, Jupiter in Aquarius, like it's like the heavens. I'm going to aim real big too, right? So that's part of that, but it's interesting because I was going to say, oh, and then you have to be disappointed because Black Moon is there to remind you, whoa, feel, but you still have to kind of come back and the reality of what she does, because she brings in sort of the pain or the suffering or I'm not enough or whatever the low level consciousness of that is. I want it all, so to speak. With Jupiter, I'm going to aim, but I can't have it all because I'm constricted. Remember, it's the 10th house of Capricorn, and Capricorn is a limit. Capricorn is a restriction. So even though you can aim, Saturn as the 10th house ruler is still saying, whoa, slow your horses, come down to reality, and Black Moon is there to remind you of that.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So Capricorn. So Capricorn is I see Capricorn very much as duty, as utility. So a lot of people, I like this sign a lot, and it's my North Node, and this concept is like save my life. But wherever we have Saturn, there's going to be a utility there. And that's also karma. That's also where we're sort of forced to bend and squeeze until we kind of bang our head enough times that we follow the masses, right? So my Saturn's in Gemini in the 7th house of marriage and relationships, and Lord knows. So I use and I think none of those are good for marriage.
You would have done well in an arranged marriage.
I wasn't an arranged marriage. My first one was arranged.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, there we
but
go.
I thought too much for myself that I was like, nope, I got Mars and Capricorn.
How funny. I didn't know that.
Yes. So you start to see, and people will say, well, oh, Saturn, that's your karma. That's the alchemy planet. Yeah, but if you even take it further to, I think, at least if it was in Cancer, maybe I would have had or even Pisces. Okay, codependent addicts, I naturally attract that as well as Pisces, but maybe I would have yield, to use your word, like I would have yielded more. That's the part of the chart. I have yielding all over my chart. My whole chart's water, but that's the area where I don't. So you start to see, oh, it's not only Saturn, it's now the sign and the element in the house. It just does not go well with the rest of the chart. So yeah, Saturn is so you have and I use my will with others. You're not yielding shit either. And then you have this yield here in your professional house.
Yeah,
Like,
I use my will. So it's like, okay, I've got some points to make here. I'll play nice for a little bit, but if you guys don't get with it, then I gotta come in and like.
And you can manage it a bit because you've got the Venus. So you kind of have the ability to sort of balance that, right? But really, Saturn is making her point her way, or no way. Like that's there. Like
Yeah.
I will be done.
Yeah, right. That's where the Venus can bring in a little charm and a little like nod and a wink, but really I do want my way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. Yeah, so we start to see, why that might be, and if you say, well, I'm not accepted so much in groups, it's that if I'm trying to bulldoze, if I'm trying to use the group to do my will, which is the antithesis of a group, right? The group is supposed to be conformity and obedience and all that. You could see that any place Saturn is, I use, and then the sign, there's always going to be a block. Because if you have it in the first, okay, you use your, let's say, body, well, it's going to be restricting. It's always a feeling of utility and duty and restriction. So that's why that's the karmic planet, because of that key phrase.
That's a really important piece for me to just really sit with, actually.
Okay. Yeah. Oh my God. When I learned my Saturn really well, because I'm like, wow, I'm such a giver and I'm so Piscean, and this Uranus that I have, this Jupiter that I have, and I give, and I've been a provider of my partners. Like, why don't I work in relationships? Like, I knew that Saturn was there, and I knew it was a resistance. I knew it was something that was a block. But really, when I understood the utility piece, I was like, oh, and I wrote a whole book on mirror, mirror with your partner. Like, the purpose of your partner is to mirror. Like, I am a whore when it comes to the knowledge, the Gemini. So I have a quote that says the fastest way to enlightenment is through relationships. Like, if that isn't Saturn and Gemini in the seven, what is? Like, because it's like, oh, mirror to me, mirror, so I can gluttony and grow, right? So you start to see why these things on all levels. And I think that that's a nice aspect about myself in relationship, because I'm not blaming and I'm not saying you're the problem. I'm taking the responsibility, but it becomes a boundary to being fluid. And anywhere that there's Saturn, there's a lack of fluidity, because it's I have a criticism, I have a boundary, I have a duty, that it doesn't let you flow. And that's why the karmic nature of it. And so it's really the house that we most grow in.
Yeah, I was once told by an astrologer not too long ago, she's like, yeah, I don't think groups are going to be your thing in terms of the way you work.
You don't play well with others.
And like, there's a lot of layers here, but I can ultimately see that, like, yeah, if I am using a group, for example, for my work, it's just kind of maybe not going to work out. And I've started to shift my whole orientation around that anyway. So this is a really interesting piece to me.
And then when you go to the levels of consciousness, you go look at the 4 levels of consciousness of Leo. We're talking about the stray cat. Part of what you're saying is, I want to be a stray cat in a group. Well, you can't be a stray cat in a group. It's the opposite, right? Then you go to the cat, a regular house cat. Well, you don't want to be ordinary and regular, especially because it's Leo. Then you go to the lion. Okay, you could be the king of the jungle in the group. You could be the deciding vote, but we're talking higher consciousness. But really, the way to master that is to be the ringleader of the group, the one that herds the conversation forward. And that really is a gift that you have, specifically with that 10th house sign. So you can live it out in a high consciousness, but first you have to understand what you're blocking. And that's what started to help me when I understood my Saturn in Gemini. I was like, oh, this is what I do wrong. It wasn't to hate myself, but now I can grow. And you do have to have a little bit of the trickster in relationships, right? You have to dot your I's and you know, I mean, it's part of the nature, right? It's the enhancement and the illusion of Gemini. So when I really understood it from a consciousness perspective, I was like, oh, okay, this makes sense. So it's not about I don't play well with others, and groups are never going to be my thing. No, groups are my thing when I can really move the conversation forward and live out the will of your son. And if you help people feel what you're feeling, because what's that saying? People will never, they might forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you make them feel. If you can really tap into all that cancer and move groups forward with their feeling, there's, I mean, talk about congruence. Aquarius.
Yeah.
So my Aquarius is Uranus Libra. This is another generational. So a lot of people are going to have, and this is a 7-year cycle. Uranus is in the sign for 7 years. So 7 years of Libra, and then of course the same. Now we're in Taurus. Right now Uranus is in Taurus. So these kids are growing up with Uranus and Taurus. That is going to later on reflect in generational changes. I don't know if you saw that series, The Changing of the Gods, but that's what they were talking about, Uranus and Pluto generationally. And so these generations redefine the constructs of the day. So these kids now, Uranus and Taurus, are perhaps going to change, you know, the views of wealth or the body or money, whereas the generation of Uranus and Aries was all about terrorism and war, because we were at war that whole time with Iraq and Afghanistan, and Pluto was in Capricorn, which was the terrorist. So you start to see how the generations are formed with Uranus and Pluto, and then the individual pieces of the chart, how they're going to live it out. So, so we're in the I know and I balance, and then what differs here is the house, and mine is in the groups. So you, oh, you're a Scorpio already. Okay, so I'm a little older than you. So your generation already moved into Scorpio. So you're like, I know, I want in the I have house. So what you know and what you want to get paid for, or you want to value, or you want someone to value what you have to say. And that makes perfect sense. Now, because generationally, this is also a generational thing, is this opposition of Uranus Chiron. So if your wound is, I want validation from others or people to pay me to validate that I'm worth, and here you're like, I know, I want, and I want to get paid for it, you can see how perhaps what you value in yourself or what you charge is dependent on what other people say you're worth, and that can mess. And Uranus in the second is people who don't manage their resources, just in a piecemeal sort of concept. Uranus in the second, people like Neptune, they tend to not value their money, their time, their energy, their resources, what they're worth. So it's a self-worth issue. It's a different self-worth issue than Neptune in the second, but they're there. They're like, oh, whatever, I'm beyond the material, so to speak. So you could start to see how these two might not enforce what you know you're worth, or you think I need to know so much more to charge what I'm worth or to get what I want to have. So that would be something to work on, that you are enough type of thing. Okay. And then Pisces. So Neptune is, I believe, and anytime there's a Neptune in any house, there's going to be a blind faith, an innocence, a lack of clarity, a nebulousness, a self-worth issue. Why? Because all Pisces wants is to believe in something else that they don't have to be responsible for, right? So it's that blind faith. Now, there is a level of magic and faith to believe in the world and surrender to, but wherever that planet is in that house, so you could start putting the sentence together, there's going to be a little leaning perhaps too much towards faith to the reality of things. So imagine a Neptune in Capricorn, or you're like reality with fantasy. Those people are going to be like, what the hell? That's just a gross combination. And then the house. So Neptune in Sag doesn't support me in any way whatsoever, because I'm already a Pisces Sag. So this combo just exaggerates all my philosophical leanings. I believe, and I am, and it's in the first house. So I am absolutely all about, I'm aiming beyond, it's all over. I mean, I used to be so much about the afterlife and the afterlife. I had to check that. I think that's where Cancer helped me sort of come to my reality. But there's going to be a belief in aiming higher or more in the Sagittarius, and it's Jupiter and the gluttony. And yours is in Cancer. Oh no, Neptune here in Sag. Okay, so you have it in Sag as well. Now Neptune is also generational, and it lasts 14 years. So the Neptune right now, Neptune is in Pisces. In 2025, it's going to Aries. I am a believer that when it starts going to Aries, those 14 years, all this nonsense of all this age of Aquarius and all this woo-woo is going to be shattered. That generation is going to bring, I don't exactly know how they're going to bring so much identity or war or trailblazing in the field, but they're going to bring a whole other level of consciousness with that Neptune in Aries.
It's going to be Uranus. It's going to be the Uranus Taurus intersection that looks at things like cryptocurrency and augmenting the body with data, and then using that and filtering it through the I am this and I know it because here's the proof. Is what I suspect.
That makes a lot of sense. So yeah, that generation is going to be fascinating to watch, because Pisces and Aries are not signs that get along, because one's a head and one's a tail, right? So if you think of the fish, so the idea that they're meeting, Neptune as Pisces and Aries as the head, like, I'm just curious. And yes, introducing that Uranus Taurus is I don't know what they're going to do, but they're going to do pretty intense things. But I think from a Neptune and Aries perspective, just in our generation, Neptune Pisces, when that snow globe shatters to an I am, not only are the narcissists going to be on full display, I think we're going to see a lot of toppling of false prophets too.
Mm-hmm.
I think those that have some substance, that are the identity, the real will sort of surface, and a lot of toppling of the false prophets. So this is a 14-year stretch. So you have I believe, I am in the I think house. So if a lot of your belief in yourself, and I'm just going to play off this, is I know, and then if I know I'm allowed to have, how much emphasis are you putting in knowledge? How much emphasis are you putting in studying? How much are you accumulating in terms of information in order to prove your worth?
Oh, a lot.
Yeah.
It's endless.
Yeah. The other thing what's interesting in your particular chart, you have like these reverse trends. So we see Virgo in the Pisces house. We see Cancer in Capricorn's house. We see Pisces in Gemini's house. So like the spiritual consciousness and the lower consciousness. We see the reversal of the norm. I'm so original that I'm not ordinary, right? I'm so beyond original, but I still need to prove my worth in the Chiron. So you have this originality, but you still try to, sort of find the needle and thread so that it fits into the norm or the body or
to the common narrative of the day. Because what good is it if I'm so original that nobody can accept what I have to say?
And I took this class once, and the lady would say the riches are in the niches. But she's like, don't be so original that the niche doesn't exist, right? Mm-hmm. And so I did that. I found a lot of cool mythological ways to say stuff that's already been said. And because it's the way that my mind works, like myth and symbol and archetype. But as I streamline, I have to go to common language and then give my version of it. And so you don't want to price yourself out of the niche that it's so niche. It's so original that no one knows what you're talking about. And I'm super guilty of that. So let's talk about the black moon. We talked a bit about it, the black moon, and then the ascendant. the black moon is viewed, and it's in your lecture on Scorpio is your black moon section. So it's going to be the same I want, because we're going to view it as Scorpio. So I want and I aim in my case. So if I want, but yet I aim, you can see that they can struggle because I want so much. Think of almost like a greed or a gluttony to want, but it's always over there. So there's a lack of satisfaction, and it's in the first house, and I'm never enough. And that's a theme again that I see in the chart with all the Pisces with the Chiron and Aries. So I want here, but it's really over there. How do I reconcile those? And then the ascendant, and then we'll do yours. The ascendant is your sign and then the decanat. So a true glutton that I am, Sag in Sag. I aim and I aim, and I'm constantly more and more, and I have to be better, and I'm never enough. It is an obsession. It's sick. I mean, it's just, it's disgusting. I mean, but it's so on point. And so when you start to weave the message, it's like, oh my God, the level of worthlessness, the lack of identity, where do I begin in the other, the gluttony, the codependency, the whole story makes sense. The 2 failed marriages, like you start to see, like I've lived out this chart exactly as I needed to live it out. And you gain consciousness and you start tweaking. But it makes you say, oh, okay, I'm supposed to be this. And then that judgment fades a bit, hopefully. If we sell it to our client appropriately, then we did our job. So you're a black man, we talked about this before. So I want and I feel in the house of utility. So you maybe feel, or you use duty or utility or your resources to, and we talked about this, right? Like the seductress or the to bring people in, and through that emotion and through that sort of utility, you bring people towards you and the wanting. So that's one way to live that out. And then you're Virgo, and it's of the Venus decanat. So we're talking the Taurus, so the I have. Remember, the decanats are linked to the earth. So this is, if it would have been Libra, then it would have been the Libra decanat. But this is the I have to the I analyze. So every time you have something, maybe you overanalyze, or maybe you overanalyze how you're going to get something, and you spend, like you said, thinking around it, and then, well, I just spent all this energy, this mental energy, and then never acted on it. Mm-hmm. So that's how you would do the ascendant, the I analyze, and the I have. And then I don't know what judgment there might be around it, because if the I have house has Uranus, I have to know, I have to analyze what I know in order for me to be worthy to make money from it, because here's the wound of financial compensation, and others have to find me worthy. So you start to see how it all says the same thing.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Like, and I have judgment about, like, I'm like, who is this person that's just going off? They have no training. They haven't done anything. Like, they're just saying whatever and charging this much money, and people are falling for it.
Girlfriend, you're preaching to the choir. I don't have the problem with my pricing. And I've always said this, the core message I learned the minute I opened my eyes are spirit and matter together. And I do have credentials like you, like I've got my credentials. And I know that in my case, it's so Jupiter, right? It's so much that I have to pull back. The gluttony is all over the chart. But right, looking for that validation or that worth in the other, when all these other people are hanging their shingle and they don't know a quarter of what you know.
Mm-hmm. Right. But if I'm stuck in analysis.
Oh, right. Exactly.
And I'm not,
it's going to line up.
The last part, the last like push, then I'm just stuck in the birth canal.
Exactly. So phenomenal cosmic powers, itty bitty living space. So that's how you use those keywords. I'll send this to you with the recording. And again, you have in your basics all of it, but this is sort of like a condensed, like quickie snapshot. So even if you're doing a chart and you bring this up and you kind of circle, you can start to see or if you have a printed out chart, like I said, you can write and you can have it. And it's like another layer and another layer and another layer.
Cool.
So these are all different ways to get to that same theme of the sun, moon, ascendant. Any questions before we go?
No, this is really helpful. I appreciated it. It's fun.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, it starts to be fun. Look, you gotta laugh, right? I mean, like, oh my God, I'm exactly how I'm supposed to be. I'm full of nonsense. Like, oh, okay, well, there I am again. I mean, so absolutely. So this will condense. I'll send you, Jen's traveling, so I don't know if you'll get it maybe tonight, because she'll send it out with the attachment, but you'll get it probably today.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
See you Monday.
Wonderful. Well, thank you.
Oh, I'll see you
soon.
Wednesday. Are you coming Wednesday to Shaman?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I need to remember to.
I'll
You'll
send
send out the information,
I'll probably
right?
send out it's today or tomorrow. I'll send it out.
Okay, cool.
Awesome.
Sounds
See
good.
you then.
Bye.
Bye.